The eternal path, a journey beyond the veil of consciousness. The awakening of the seeker. In the beginning, when the first spark of awareness flickered within the vessel of human form, there arose a hunger that no earthly sustenance could satisfy. This hunger was not of the flesh but of the spirit, a yearning to pierce the veil that separates the visible from the invisible, the known from the unknowable. For millennia upon millennia, across vast deserts of time and through forests of forgotten wisdom, humanity has wandered as a pilgrim seeking the face of truth itself. The seeker, wrapped in the garments of mortality, stands at the threshold of existence and gazes into the infinite depths of reality. What is this reality that calls to the soul with such insistence? It is not merely the surface of things, the play of light upon water, the dance of shadows at dusk, but rather the essence that breathes beneath all phenomena, the silent pulse that sustains the cosmos in its eternal becoming. From the earliest moments of conscious existence, human beings have constructed temples of understanding in their minds. These temples, whether simple or ornate, whether founded upon sand or stone, represent the fundamental philosophical impulse that distinguishes consciousness from mere animal awareness. Before religion crystallized into doctrine, before sacred texts were inscribed upon papyrus and parchment, there existed this primal movement of the spirit toward comprehension, toward unity with what transcends the fragmentary nature of ordinary perception. The journey begins not with answers but with questions that burn like sacred fires in the darkness of unknowing. Who am I? What is this world that appears before me? What lies beyond the horizon of death? These questions are not intellectual curiosities to be satisfied by clever arguments. They are the very heartbeat of the mystical quest, the drumbeat that calls the wanderer home to the source from which all consciousness springs. The luminous ones who walked before. Throughout the ages, there have emerged from among the multitude certain extraordinary beings, radiant souls who seem to carry within themselves a light borrowed from realms beyond mortal comprehension. These were the illuminated ones, the teachers who spoke with authority not derived from books but from direct encounter with the Absolute itself. Their names echo across centuries. Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree, receiving the dawn of enlightenment, Jesus in the wilderness, communing with the infinite, Lao Tzu contemplating the Tao that cannot be spoken, Shankara dissolving the illusion of separation, Plotinus ascending to the One. These luminous figures appeared to their contemporaries as gods incarnate, as divine messengers bearing gifts of wisdom from celestial heights. Vast populations bowed before them, structured entire civilizations around their teachings, and enshrined their words as eternal law. Yet within this veneration lies a subtle danger, a seductive error that can divert the seeker from the authentic path. For these extraordinary souls, despite the supernatural qualities attributed to them, were fundamentally no different in essence from any human consciousness. They were not visitors from another realm, but rather pilgrims who had successfully completed the journey that beckons to all. The same human nature that animated their quest pulses within every heart. The same capacity for awakening that flowered in their awareness sleeps as potential in every consciousness, waiting for the conditions that will allow it to unfold. What makes a Buddha, a Christ, a Lao Tzu is not some supernatural endowment unavailable to others, but rather the courage to journey inward, the persistence to continue when the path grows dark, and the willingness to surrender all cherished illusions in exchange for naked truth. They discovered what was always present but obscured by the veils of conditioning, culture, and conceptual thinking. They remembered what the soul knows but the mind forgets in its intoxication with multiplicity and difference. The democracy of divine consciousness. Here lies one of the most profound mysteries of the spiritual path. If one consciousness can ascend to the summit of realization, then every consciousness possesses this same potential. The truth is not a private possession to be hoarded by the privileged few. It is not a treasure buried in some distant land accessible only to those who possess secret maps. Rather, it is the very ground upon which all stand, the air that all breathe, the light that illumines every moment of existence. When Buddha attained enlightenment, he demonstrated a possibility inherent in human consciousness itself. When Plotinus experienced union with the One, he revealed a capacity that slumbers in every soul. These realizations can occur again and again, in every era, in every culture, in every individual who turns away from the distractions of the surface and plunges into the depths. This is the great democracy of divine consciousness, that the Absolute does not play favorites, does not reserve its revelation for the specially chosen. The universe does not operate according to arbitrary selection but follows its own profound logic. Wherever consciousness opens itself fully, wherever the barriers of ego dissolve, wherever attention becomes total and undivided, there the truth reveals itself as it has always revealed itself, with the same blazing immediacy, the same undeniable presence. The path walked by the great mystics and sages is not closed behind them like a door sealed shut. It remains eternally open, eternally available. Each generation must discover it anew, each seeker must traverse it personally, for spiritual realization is not knowledge that can be transmitted like information from one computer to another. It is rather a transformation of being, a fundamental shift in the center of gravity of consciousness. The weight of tradition and the lightness of direct experience. There is value, certainly, in studying the maps drawn by those who have gone before. The wisdom traditions of humanity, whether the sutras of Buddhism, the Upanishads of Hinduism, the mystical texts of Sufism, the contemplative writings of Christian mystics, or the philosophical insights of Plato and Heidegger, these represent accumulated treasures of spiritual exploration. They can inspire, guide, illuminate certain stretches of the journey. Yet here the seeker must exercise discrimination, must remain alert to a subtle trap. For there is a profound difference between following a map and walking the territory itself, between believing in truth and experiencing it directly, between accepting testimony and bearing witness oneself. One may memorize all the scriptures ever written, may study every philosophical system ever devised, may become encyclopedically learned in comparative religion, and still remain as far from reality as one who has never opened a spiritual text. The danger lies in substituting another's vision for one's own direct seeing, in allowing borrowed light to replace the sun itself. When the Buddha reportedly said, "Be a light unto yourself," he was not dismissing his own teachings but rather pointing to something more fundamental, the necessity of personal realization, of first-hand encounter with what is ultimately real. The authentic seeker may draw nourishment from the wisdom of others but does not become dependent upon it. One may walk for a time in the footsteps of Jesus or Lao Tzu, may contemplate the insights of Eckhart or Shankara, but ultimately must venture beyond all teachers, all systems, all frameworks, into the naked encounter with reality that admits no intermediary. For in the final reckoning, what matters is not what one believes but what one knows through direct experience. What matters is not the beauty of the philosophy one espouses, but the depth of transformation one embodies. The truth sought is not an idea to be grasped by the intellect, but a living reality to be merged with completely, a fire in which all separation is consumed. The personal path to the impersonal truth. And so the seeker faces a paradox. The path to truth is intensely personal, yet leads to what is utterly impersonal. One must find one's own way, must rely finally upon oneself, must discover from within what cannot be given from without. This is the most courageous and most logical of all spiritual stances, to refuse to take refuge in authorities, however venerable, and to insist upon seeing with one's own eyes, knowing with one's own being. This personal path is not a rejection of tradition, but rather a fulfillment of its deepest intention. For what did the great teachers truly offer? Not systems to be believed, but methods to be practiced, not dogmas to be defended, but invitations to explore, not final answers but provocations to inquire more deeply. They pointed toward the moon but warned against mistaking the finger for what it indicates. When one embarks upon this personal journey to truth, one follows in the footsteps of all genuine seekers while simultaneously blazing a trail that is entirely unique. For though truth is one and the same for all who realize it, the journey toward that realization is as individual as a fingerprint, as particular as the pattern of stars visible from a specific point on Earth. Moreover, this personal realization may prove more profound, more comprehensive, more illuminating than the insights of any previous generation. For consciousness evolves, humanity matures, and each epoch brings new challenges and new possibilities for understanding. The seeker of today stands upon the shoulders of all who have gone before, and may therefore see further, penetrate deeper, articulate more clearly what previous ages glimpsed but could not fully express. This is the meaning of the eternal philosophy, the perennial religion that is born anew in each moment, in each consciousness that awakens to its own true nature. It is not a fixed doctrine passed down through the ages, but rather a living discovery that occurs whenever conditions ripen, whenever the soul becomes ready to receive what it has always possessed but forgotten. Beyond the cult of the extraordinary. How many seekers have wasted precious years, entire lifetimes, running after gurus and saviors, waiting for enlighteners to bestow what can only be self-discovered? How many have projected their own unutilized potential onto external figures, believing that others possess something fundamentally unavailable to themselves? This is perhaps the greatest obstacle on the spiritual path, the belief in the essential difference between the awakened and the unawakened, the enlightened and the unenlightened, the saved and the unsaved. Such dualistic thinking perpetuates the very separation that spiritual practice aims to dissolve. It creates hierarchies where there should be recognition of shared essence, establishes distances where there should be intimacy. The mystic who has penetrated to the heart of reality knows that the division between self and other is itself an illusion, that the same consciousness peers out from behind every pair of eyes, that what appears as multiplicity is ultimately one undivided wholeness. When one truly understands this, the compulsion to follow external authorities naturally falls away, replaced by a profound trust in one's own deepest nature. This is not arrogance but rather its opposite, a humility so complete that it recognizes the divine not as something distant and other, but as the very ground of one's own being. It is to understand that what one seeks is simultaneously the seeker, that the eye cannot see itself yet is the condition of all seeing, that consciousness cannot objectify itself yet is the subject of all experience. The enlightened ones, the sages and saints, were pointing always toward this recognition. Their teachings, when properly understood, dissolve the teacher-student relationship into something more fundamental. The recognition that teacher and student are temporary roles played by the one consciousness that dreams the entire drama of existence into being. The ground that cannot be lost. Let us, then, cease our restless running after external authorities and return to the only secure foundation, our own being, our own awareness, our own direct experience of what is. This ground cannot be lost because it is what we are, cannot be found because we have never been separate from it, cannot be achieved because it is the achiever of all achievements. Reality is not elsewhere, not in some distant heaven or future state of consciousness. It is here, now, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. We are ourselves the truth we seek, and the seeking itself is often what obscures this recognition. The eye need not search for light, it is bathed in light every moment. Consciousness need not seek consciousness, it is consciousness seeking to know itself. This realization transforms everything while changing nothing. The world appears as it always has, yet it is seen anew, recognized for what it truly is. Not a collection of separate objects but a unified field of being, not a mechanical universe but a living presence, not dead matter but consciousness manifesting in infinite forms. When one rests in this recognition, the ancient questions that drove the search fall away like autumn leaves. Who am I? I am what cannot be named. What is this world? It is consciousness playing with itself. What lies beyond death? That which never dies because it was never born. These are not answers that satisfy the intellect, but dissolutions of the questions themselves in the light of direct seeing. The eternal return. And so the journey comes full circle, returns to its beginning, discovers that the end was present in the start. The eternal road to truth is not a road at all, but rather a recognition that one has never left home, that the wandering was itself a kind of dream, that awakening is not arrival but rather the cessation of imagined departure. This recognition has occurred countless times in human history, and will occur countless times again. Each awakening is utterly new, utterly fresh, yet simultaneously timeless, ancient, beyond all measure. The truth does not age, does not evolve, does not improve or decline. It simply is, eternally present, eternally available, eternally itself. The mystic's task, then, is not to become something other than what one is, but rather to recognize what one has always been. It is not to acquire knowledge but to release ignorance, not to achieve enlightenment but to stop obscuring the light that always shines. In every era, in every culture, in every human heart, this possibility waits. The invitation stands eternally open. The door has never been closed. What is required is not special talent or supernatural grace, but simply the willingness to look honestly, to question deeply, to release what is false, to remain open to what is true. The silence beyond words. In the end, all words fall silent before the reality they attempt to describe. The mystic knows that the highest teachings are transmitted in silence, that the deepest truths cannot be spoken but only pointed toward, that what is most real is simultaneously most ineffable. Yet, even this ineffability is not a barrier but rather an invitation to move beyond the realm of concepts and descriptions into direct, immediate, non-conceptual awareness. It is in this awareness that the seeker and the sought merge, that all questions dissolve into the living presence of what simply is, that the eternal road reveals itself not as a path to be traveled, but as the traveler, the traveling, and the destination merged into one seamless whole. Here, in the vast silence that contains all sounds, in the profound stillness that gives birth to all movement, the spiritual journey completes itself by recognizing that it never began. And in this recognition, there is peace. Not the peace of achievement but the peace of homecoming, not the peace of knowledge acquired but the peace of truth remembered. This is the eternal path that calls to every consciousness, the perennial philosophy that is born anew in each awakening moment, the sacred mystery that reveals itself wherever awareness becomes aware of itself. It is yours, mine, ours, the birthright of all who dare to look within and discover the infinite depths that have no bottom and the blazing light that casts no shadow. The road is eternal because it leads not forward but inward, not away but home, not to somewhere else but to here, now, where we have always been and could never not be. This is the ultimate mystical truth, that what we seek, we are, that where we are going, we have never left, that the journey and the destination are one, inseparable, eternally present, forever complete.